Hey guys, welcome back to another Vanguard video. Today we're talking about Chaos Breaker Dragon, and we're just going to get right into it. We have the act on Vanguard Circle once per turn. To cost counterblast 1, choose one of your opponent's rear guards and lock it. If you did not lock a front row rear guard, you draw one and this unit gets plus 10k until end of turn. So this is the actual only hard lock we have, and I'm going to use the terminology hard lock for cards that keep things locked until the end of the opponent's next turn. There's other cards that soft lock, and I'm going to use that terminology for cards that unlock at the end of that turn. So pretty much this is the only card that will keep things locked for essentially 2 turns is the way you kind of want to think about it, because locked cards unlock at the end of the owner's turn. So this would be on the opponent's next turn. But if you didn't lock the front row, you're getting that plus 10k and draw one, which is really nice in case they play around it. But if you do lock something like a token in the front row, that will go poof. And since you did technically lock a card, you won't get that draw one. So just a little kind of disclaimer there that you don't want to be locking tokens in the front row. And that's one of the main ways to play around CBD and lock. And so understanding both hard and soft lock activating at the end of both players' turn is important for the last skill, which is auto Vanguard Circle once per turn. When your opponent's rear guard is unlocked during any player's end phase, you cost Soul Blast 1 card with Star-vader in its card name to draw one and retire all of your opponent's rear guards that were unlocked this turn. So this could be multiple rear cards and easy draw on both players' turn, essentially for Chaos Breaker Dragon, which is very strong. Soul might be a little bit of an issue with this deck once we do get to Infinite Zero Dragon, who's actually a super strong rear in this deck as well. But for the most part, that's kind of what you need to understand, that soft and hard lock are going to be having unlocks on both players' turn. So lots of Soul Blast 1, draw one for Chaos Breaker Dragon. And then we have the second skill, continuous on Vanguard Circle. During your turn, if your opponent's rear guard was locked this turn, this unit gets continuous Vanguard Circle skill. If either your damage zone has 4 more cards, or you Persona row this turn, all your front row rear guards with Star-vader in their card names get plus 5k power, and this unit gets plus 10k power and crit plus 1. So really easy innate synergy with Glory Maker. Even before we really knew what the skill does, people were buying this out. But really good combination here. Having a crit Vanguard with guard restrict is extremely strong. And if you know that they draw check Elementary Sanctitude or have very strong blitz orders, you can even have that guard restrict for your Vanguard swing as well, which is amazing. So yeah, if you do get rushed early, you're going to be able to lock back, have that crit pressure and power to your rears, which is really strong because there is multi-attack for the Star-vader rears. Just a little bit of spoilers for Chaos Breaker Dragon. But I do have to say the deck looks very strong, but we are going to talk about a lot of the counters basically we have in the meta right now for this deck. So for those who may not be familiar with standard or like returning back to the game, let's talk about some effective lock counters. The first one is anything that spawns a lot of tokens, such as Rouga, Orphis, Artisaria, anything that get tokens in the front row or even in the back row, since once they get locked, they'll just remove themselves from the game essentially. You have anything that clears their own rears on the board, so anything that returns back to hand. Most of Lyrical Monasteria, honestly. Shove to Soul, Self-Retire. Mainly Chris Rain, Reza, and Varga are the easy examples, but we also have Harry and Night Rose as well in DZ-BT15. And anything that gives resist to board, especially your front rows, such as Belfior and Jiva. And last but not least, you have Bracing Angel Ladder, which gets around a lot of the choose effects, so they can't be targeted, and so therefore you get around a lot of the lock, or pretty much all the lock that exists for CBD right now, since they all target. But yeah, these are some kind of ways that I wanted to alleviate doom posting. I still think CBD is going to be very strong, and against a lot of the meta decks, for example, like Aichi and Yakuza, they might have to adapt and play Bracing Angel Ladder. But for the most part, I still think it's going to have a big impact on the meta just because it exists and people know it exists, so you kind of have to respect it, especially going into, let's say, the BSF or BCS meta. But again, I wanted to give some examples of some very clear meta decks that are going to be having a very easy time getting around CBD and kind of not necessarily having an auto win, but definitely a very favorable matchup into the deck. Alright, going back to the ride line, we have Earnest, Star-vader, Selenium with the auto when rode upon if you went second to draw one. Alright, next up is Neon with the auto when placed by riding from a grade 0 with Star-vader in its card name. You get to look at the top 7, choose up to 1 card with Star-vader in its card name from among them, reveal it, put it into your hand, and shuffle your deck. This is like most of your rear, so very hard to whiff. Then you also have the auto rearguard circle skill. When it boosts, if you have a grade 3 greater Vanguard with Star-vader in its card name, it also gets plus like a power until end of battle. And last but not least, in the rad line, the most interesting one, we have Unrivaled Star-vader Radon. So you have the continuous Vanguard Circle skill. If your opponent has no front row rear guards, when you would ride Star-vader Chaos Breaker Dragon from your ride deck, you can ride without discarding a card from your hand. More importantly, this is a free ride out without having to use any resources. Since your opponent plays around lock, they basically get punished by giving you a free ride up, so you get 1 more card in your hand, which is quite strong. Other than that, it doesn't really do anything if your opponent didn't play around lock, but at that point, you get to CB1 for Chaos Breaker and lock something, unless, you know, they damage denied you and you don't have the CB to pay. Then you also have the auto rearguard circle skill. When it attacks, if you have a grade 3 greater Vanguard with Star-vader card names, it gets plus 5k power into end of battle. There actually isn't anything that reses. I guess you could play like Shroud in Darkness or something, but for the most part, these are just on theme to give the extra plus 5 as a reference to what the rears did in the past. So the next guy to talk about is Star-vader Infinite Zero Dragon, very iconic break ride, but instead, he's just kind of a supporting rear here. So we have the continuous. If you have a Vanguard with Star-vader in its card name, this unit gets intercept, all of the falling, and shield plus 10. So he's always a 10k shield, which is very nice, especially in the early game to guard. Then Then you have the auto if your damage zone has 4 more cards or you Persona row this turn. This cost can be paid with Soul Blast 2, and if you do, when you would choose rearguards with this ability, you can choose up to 2 rearguards instead of 1. When placed on rearguard circle, you cost Soul Blast 1, choosing your opponent's rearguards and lock it at the end of the turn. You unlock the cards locked by this ability, so CBD is going to be activating at the end of your own turn to Soul Blast a Star-vader, retire them all, draw 1. So basically you're Soul Blasting 2 instead of Soul Blasting 1 if you want that more removal. And the last 2 skills are also amazing as well. You have auto rearguard circle. When it attacks, if your opponent has 1 or more lock cards, it gets plus 5k power until end of battle. If they have 2 or more, it gets plus 10 instead of plus 5. So very easy power that's going to be racking up very, very fast. Plus 10 from his own, plus 5 from the red text from CBD, and of course you have Persona Ride and any other else, power that's going to be stacking on him, basically making him a very easy magic number for the deck. Then his last skill lets you multi-attack with the auto rearguard circle skill once per turn. When your grade 3 greater Vanguard attacks, if your rearguard did not stand by the ability of your card with the same name as this card this turn, you cost Energy Blast 3 and stand this unit. So multi-attack inherently built into the deck, and there's another card, Palladium, that does enable multi-attack as well. So I think Infinite Zero Dragon is an extremely strong card. It's easy power for the deck, easy multi-attack, but does eat up a lot of your Energy Blast. So going first, you will really only have 3 energy to spare for other effects, and his Soul Blast 2 is really strong to get rid of more rears, and you basically become very, very soul hungry because you Soul Blast 1 or 2 for this, and then you Soul Blast 1 essentially on both players' turn for CBD, and of course CBD has to Soul Blast specifically a Star-vader. So we'll discuss some of the options for kind of soul fueling for this deck. There's kind of a very few, and I think soul and fronts feel pretty bad in this meta, but I can definitely see people testing that out. So again, just an extremely strong card. Reminder again that it is a soft lock, so it does unlock at the end of the turn that you locked it, so pretty much at the end of your turn, but just a very, very strong card that definitely saved the deck. The next card to talk about that also enables multi-attack is Prison Gate Star-vader Palladium. So the auto when placed on rearguard circle from hand, if you have a grade 3 greater Vanguard with Star-vader in its card name and your opponent already has a lock card through something like, CBD's CB1 to lock, you cost Energy Blast 3, choose one of your opponent's rearguards and lock it. At the end of turn, you unlock the card locked by this ability. So another soft lock similar to IZD. Then you have the auto rearguard circle ability when your grade 3 greater Vanguard with Star-vader's card name attacks. If your rearguard did not stand by the ability of your card with the same name as this unit this turn, you cost shove this unit to soul, choose one of your rearguards with Star-vader in its card name and stand it. If your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, that chosen unit gets plus IK power until end of turn. So going first, you can do 5 attacks regardless of whether you have a locked card on your opponent's board or not, which is extremely strong. And I love the design that they've kind of done here, where you're only still getting 1 hard lock. Again, all the rears are soft lock, but you can still get some really strong combos and easy multi-attack for the deck. So yeah, I can't believe we're in 2026 having CBD doing 5 attacks, even going first, which is crazy because none of this is tied to your opponent's grade. Same for Infinite Zero Dragon as well. And again, that EB3 cost is basically to use your excess energy that you didn't use for IZD to restand itself to pretty much just get another lock and removal, and then the end of turn. And then at the end of your turn, you can still Blast 1 for CBD, retire, draw 1. And then, with the hard lock, when you unlock at the end of your opponent's next turn, then you'll be able to get, another draw 1. Again, Palladium is just a very strong card in combination with Infinite Zero Dragon and really put the cohesiveness and easy multi-attack of this deck together. The next card to talk about is Star-vader Colony Maker, which is just a very iconic card. You have the auto when placed on rearguard circle. If you have Vanguard with Star-vader in its name, you cost counterblast 1 to perform one of the following. You get to look at the top 7 cards of your deck, choose up to 1 card with Star-vader and its different card name from this unit from among them, reveal it, put it in your hand, and shuffle the deck. Amazing for finding your Persona Rides as well as Infinite Zero Dragon. Or you can choose a grade 1 with Star-vader and its card name from your drops, such as Palladium we just took a look at, and Call to Rearguard Circle. So really easy to Soul Blast, essentially Palladium once it's ready, shift the Soul, and then call it back with Colony Maker from drop. Just a very, very easy, simple, strong combo. Then you have the last skill, which is Auto Rearguard Circle. When it attacks, if you have a grade 3 greater Vanguard with Star-vader, it gets plus 5k power until end of battle. If your opponent has a lock card, it also gets another plus 5. So going first, you're going to just have very easy numbers between Colony Maker, IZD, and whatever is in your front row. I think Colony Maker is just amazing. Being able to burn all your excess CB to just get more cards onto your board is extremely strong, or to just to find more pieces. Because there are a lot of Maple and Combine Rushers. They gave 2 Star-vaders in Standard because, it's 2026. Every deck's got to have a Maple and Combine Rusher. But yeah, just a very, very simple effect for Colony Maker that's essentially been upgraded. Being able to top 7 for any Star-vader is amazing. And again, being able to call mainly your Palladiums back from drop onto your board from a multi-attack is really good. And again, none of that power is restricted to your opponent's grade either. So just an extremely solid card. The next card to talk about is Demon Claw Star-vader Lanthanum. So the auto and drop when your opponent's rearguard is locked by the ability of your Vanguard with Star-vader its card name, so it has to be through CBD. If it is other than during the battle phase and all of your rearguards have different card names on this card, you cost Soul Blast 1 call this card to rearguard circle. So not exactly the same as Maple, but kind of similar. It's technically activating during main phase, but he also has the continuous rearguard circle guardian circle skill. If you have a grade 3 greater Vanguard with Star-vader's card name, it gets plus 5k power and plus 5k shield. It's kind of funny just to kind of play homage to like what the card did before, where it got plus 2k for every locked card, but here it's also the only 10k shield in the deck besides Infinite Zero Dragon. So really nice to have more 10k shields in the deck, and very easy for this card to recur itself. So you can then use Mega Colony's skill to get either Palladium back onto your board, or maybe another Lanthanum, whatever you need in order to have more boosters and rebuild your entire board. And then of course there's also going to be Glory Maker, who's also got like the ride phase effect. So yeah, Lanthanum is really, really good. I think you definitely want to play lower copies of this guy just because he has a very simple like Maple recursion effect. But again, it's just more 10k shield in the deck, which is really nice, and also makes a very easy 13k booster magic number. So honestly, just an amazing card. It does check your grade, so it's not 10k shield early like IZD, but it's still a really, really good card that's going to be able to get some easy power scaling. And again, more 10k shields in the deck is always nice. Next Star-vader to talk about is Furious Claw, Star-vader, Niobium. So if the act and drop, if you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard with Star-vader, its card name, you cost Energy Blast 3, call this card to rearguard circle. It's very easy to get another body back onto your board. Then you continuous rearguard circle. If your opponent has 1 or more lock cards, this unit gets plus 5k power. If they have 2 or more lock cards and your opponent's Vanguard's grade 3 or greater, it gets another plus 5, also active during your opponent's turn. So easy 20k beater once you add, CBD's red text, easy 25, Palladium 30. It's going to scale up very easily. And then once you put like a 13k booster behind that, 43. The only problem I really have with this card is you definitely want to play it at lower ratios if you play it at all, because that EB3 clashes directly with Palladium. That's the biggest problem I have with this card, because you're definitely spending EB3 on IZD if you can every turn in order to stand him, aka for Infinite Zero Dragon. So yeah, Niobium is just a very simple card. EB3, get another body onto your board, save yourself from hand. But again, I think your energy is going to be very, very tight with this deck unless you did go second. So next up, we have Strike Star-vader Krypton with the auto when placed on rearguard circle. If you have a Vanguard with Star-vader in its card name, you may soul charge 1. So more soul for the deck to kind of fuel, the soul blast heavy cost that you have to play for Infinite Zero Dragon as well as CBD. Then you have the continuous on rearguard circle. If you have a grade 3 greater Vanguard with Star-vader in its card name, this unit gets boost. So really easy to make a magic number behind Infinite Zero Dragon because it's going to be easy 10k boost. But more importantly, that soul charge is you may instead of mandatory. So it's really easy to fuel that soul if you need it. But in the late game for the on plays, you don't have to soul charge 1, which is very nice. So he's going to be really easy to grab off Mega Colony or your ride line. But I think for the most part, Krypton is probably something you'll see at very few copies, if at all. But I do think in a pure Star-vader build or maybe in like a budget option, I think he's a pretty solid option. All right, the last card to talk about, which Messiah can technically steal, not that I think they're going to be playing it at all, is Hollow Twin Blades Binary Star. We have the auto when discarded from hand, specifically during your ride phase. If you have Vanguard with only Link Joker for its clan, you may call this card to rearguard circle as rest. If your Vanguard's grade is the same as your opponent's Vanguard grade, when you call this card, you may call it a stand instead of rest. So just a free body on board when you ditch it during ride phase. So if we get like a Bellikikro or Gojo equivalent for Link Joker, or specifically for Brandgate, this combos pretty well in that deck just to get free bodies on board. But I think Messiah definitely has better cards to play, and this card isn't Star-vader named, so it doesn't really have great synergy with the deck. So maybe some budget lists will play it, but I don't really see you playing this card, honestly. All right, finally, to talk about some deck building options. The first one here is Glory Maker, which I think most lists are going to be playing just because you already have crit and easy power to Vanguard, so why not add guard restrict? Glory Maker basically comes out for free as a body and then retires itself, so it sets itself back up into drop. When your grade 3 or greater Vanguard is placed, if you don't have a rear of the same name, you call to a back or rearguard circle. Technically, you could put it on side, but for the most part, it's going to be behind Vanguard, because when it boosts, if you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard, you can get the red text of your opponent cannot play blitz orders, or when your opponent would call cards into Guardian Circle, they must guard with Tomar at the same time. So if they want to PG your CBD 2 crit swing, they have to give up 3 cards essentially, putting 2 cards from hand to Guardian Circle and then still discarding 1, unless they have Elementaria Sanctitude, but at that point, you could even use the cannot play blitz orders effect, and they kind of have to think a lot about guarding that way. So for the most part, with Glory Maker, you're just using the double battle door effect to basically guard hand restrict your opponent when they have to PG your Vanguard. And the other options we did want to talk about is Fluctuate Buster Barrage. Now, while this isn't reaching 30k shield, you can reach 25. You put IZD onto the Guardian Circle, and then you put another grade 2, so in total that's 25k shield, just because this deck really doesn't have any early game shield. And if your IZD does get killed, it's kind of more of an incentive for you to put it back onto Guardian Circle. I do think removal could definitely be a big problem for this deck specifically, which is why Colony Maker is really strong, but it also doesn't have any inherent countercharge, which is why I could see Boba Mine being mentioned, but I didn't want to talk more about set order packages here. For the last slot, I want to talk about Synthetica because I think it's just more shield for the deck. You're going to be easily soul blasting out your ride line, so why not put a 1-up that is a 20k shield in the deck? And last but not least, I wanted to talk about Glitch because I think it's a really cool 1-up you can be playing in the deck because again, you soul blast out your ride deck pretty easily, and so you can remove it from drop and check top 7 for a grade 3 or greater card. This is mainly going to be for Infinite Zero Dragon or a Reckless piece to add it into your hand. If not, it's just kind of more of like a gimmicky shield that can get additional shield if your opponent also has a G-Zone card. So yeah, kind of just a funny 1-up you could be playing in the deck if you feel like you want to try it within the deck building. The next slide is talking about cards where we really need some extra soul. I think Go Ahead Makani is an okay option. I think either way, getting the extra soul in this deck is going to feel pretty bad unless you are playing soul in fronts. But if you're playing soul in fronts, you're not playing 20k fronts, so you're lacking a lot of shield that the deck doesn't really have. I think Go Ahead Makani is a decent option because you're only doing one blind soul charge and you can choose not to soul charge. Plus, you can just shove him back into soul once you're grade 3 or greater. So effectively 2 soul. Prison is technically 3 soul, but you do have to rest one of your units, and it's really awkward. It also feels like a brick as well, because this is 0 shield. And again, I think soul and fronts are amazing in this deck, but I'm not really sure it's the way to go just because of how aggressive the meta is right now. And I think 20k shields, especially because you don't have anything else that gains additional shield besides your like grade 1 as well as IZD. So I think having the 20k shield is really valuable, which is why you won't see it in any of the lists that I have as an example. But I do want to mention these as options that you can mess around with the deck, because I do think having the extra soul flexibility is really nice into the later game if you want to have more of a grindy tempo and game plan with this deck. The next slide to talk about are the legendary Vanguard cards, and I think these are all really great options for the deck. I think the main one to point out is Alrest and Voldemort, which are going to be your kind of prime options for this deck in my opinion, because you don't really have a good way to CB draw cards in the early game, like a Blaviloss effect. You only really have Mega Colony, but that's not really changing your hand into any bigger shield, because you're either adding a Star-vader or getting another card onto your board. It's not really changing the shield value that you have in your hand at the present. I think it's just an extremely strong card because of the meta we're in right now, and also amazing in the mirror. You're never going to use the EB3 effect, but you have the ability when placed on hand, other than during the battle phase, you perform the following. You can counterblast 1 to draw 1, and until the end of this fight, it gets plus 5k power, and this unit cannot be chosen or retired by opponent's card effects. And if your opponent is grade 2 and you belong to only one clan, then you also get the extra plus 5. So if you're grade 2 gaming someone, it's just a 20k body. It's also just a 15k body throughout the whole game and can't be retired or chosen. So in the mirror, it's really nice because they can't lock it. It'll just sit there in the front row, and if they swing into it, then you just saved yourself hand. It's as simple as that. You also have the EB3 effect to stun something as well, but again, you're very much energy blast hungry in CBD for your other rearguard effects. But I think Alrest and Voldemort are very, very interesting in this deck, so you'll see it in a lot of the lists just because I think CB draw 1 early game is very nice, and you also make some very, very easy scaling in the early game as well. For the other Dual Nation cards, I think Olgus and Gravel are kind of interesting, but I don't really see them being too great in this deck, just because you don't really have too many orders to grab. You can grab Sanctitude off the top 7. You could also be grabbing Buster Barrage as well if you're playing more copies of that. But I think for the most part, it's really just here for the CB1, reveal the top, you put it into your hand. If you reveal the trigger card, you get to choose your opponent's rear guards and retire it. So really nice to have retire in a meta where a lot of rears might come out very fast and rush you. But it is RNG locked essentially for that retire. And so for basically the cost can just be read as CB1 reveal, put into your hand, which is nice at some points. And if you're really desperate, you could EB3 to kind of fish for something out of your deck. But I think for the most part, Alrest and Voldemort, aka the Dragon Empire Dual Nation, look a lot stronger. And last but not least, we also have the Persona Shield grade 1s, which I think are very solid options for the deck. The only problem is that for the auto to move it to Guardian Circle for Soul Blast 1 when you play a Persona Shield is going to eat through your soul pretty fast if you have multiple of them on the board. But at worst, it's just a 10k booster, and you have another body on your board, and you also have 10k shield in your hand, or maybe 15k shield if you're fighting a Stride deck set or something. So I could definitely see it as an option for the deck, but I think the main one you will probably see in lists is Alrest and Voldemort, which you'll see in some example deck lists in a second. For the last slide here, we have the Regulus pieces, which are going to be Primordial Heartblade. I think this is a really great option because your red text says or for Persona Ride. You really don't want to heal out, and you want to guarantee that you have that red text pressure for your kill turn on turn 4. So I think Primordial Heartblade is a solid option. It just acts as a 4th Persona Ride for the deck, and it can be played from drop, which is just amazing. I think Bracing Angel Ladder is really great as well. Just for the mirror, it's also more soul and just draw 1. And of course, your Vanguard gets +5 once you stack that on top of your other buffs, such as the 10 if you didn't lock a front row, and then another 10k 2k and a crit to the red text, your Vanguard's going to get pretty big very fast. And of course, you have that red text, all your rears cannot be chosen and cannot be put other than on rearguard circle by opponent's card effects. So really nice for any removal matchups as well as in the mirror to ensure that your rearguards can't get locked. And last but not least, we have the drop effects for Protection Twincast here, just because I think this deck lacks a lot of early game shield. So I think Protection Twincast is kind of the savior here, as well as Fire Regalis just kind of remove itself, draw one, or get a little bit early game. It's really easy to get like pop off Fire Regalis, get a Mega Colony, then all of a sudden have a board, which is really great. All right, my favorite part of the video, let's talk about some deck building. Now, again, this is day one list, so very, very early, but let me go through the whole breakdown of the list here. Pretty much we just maxed out on 4 to 3 of every single good card. We've got 4 Palladium, 4 Mega Colony, 4 IZD, of course, maxing on the Persona rides, but here we have Bracing Angel Ladder, specifically for the mirror, and it's also more soul, as well as Makani. Now, Makani's only 2 soul for the deck, but that's essentially 1 more lock for IZD, or the full cost for IZD's Soul Blast 2 in order to lock 2. So more removal and a little bit more soul fueling. You'll notice that Makani, Glory Maker, and Lanthanum are all at 3 copies. This is because they're kind of like cards you don't really need to see too often. Makani you don't really want to see for the extra soul until later in the game. So I can definitely see an argument for 2 instead of 3. That's probably the better way to go about this. But again, we have kind of like a 3-3 ratio for the grade ones you don't really need to see too often, because most of the time you will have Glory Maker, Lanthanum, and then Palladium. We have 1 Buster Barrage here because I think the deck really needs some kind of extra shield. So definitely mess around with some more defensive options in the deck, because it's really nice to have extra shield, and this deck doesn't really have that kind of potential and tankiness to draw a lot of cards until turn 3. So Buster Rush could save you there, but for the most part it's kind of just a one-off to be that 25k shield. There should be an Elementaria Sanctitude in here as well, but in a lot of these lists you'll notice that there's just 4 normal PGs because I've just left the 1 in Fluctuate Barrage there. You can definitely play 2 if you want that for the 25k shield, because it's really nice to have that for like some smaller swings for like 33 or kind of opportunities where you don't want to give up a lot of shield. So you'll notice that there's 4 the Dual Nation here, and this does make this list extremely CB heavy, especially since Star-vaders did not get a counter charger, but I really like it in the list because it is really good in the mirror, and it's also just easy body and very easy magic numbers in the early game to make some 23 or even bigger columns with Lanthanum, especially once you hit turn 3. You don't really want him in your front row by turn 3, so it's very easy to just intercept to get him off to really optimize your early game guarding. But I would say for the most part, it's definitely something you can cut because Colony Maker is going to be using a lot of CB in the early game, and your Vanguard also uses CB1, and you have no counter charge. But yeah, I do think it's a good option if you do kind of want something to kind of be very reactive to what your opponent does, especially if you plan to eat a lot of damage, or maybe just plan to go to 4 immediately for that limit break to have that crit pressure as soon as you ride up. But yeah, I think Mega Colony definitely has to be a 4 for sure. Same for Palladium, IZD, again, as mentioned earlier. We have restand heals in here just because there's a lot of things that restand right now. Mostly the Icon decks, but a lot of other niche decks have a lot of restand rears or Vanguard. So really, really great to have that there. And as you can see, we are on 3 20k shield effect fronts because we have the 3 Makani here to kind of supplement. It does kind of suck that Makani, again, is a blind soul charge, kind of very similar to like Krypton. But for the most part, I still think it's very much necessary when you do get to the later turns. And again, Angel Ladder is fueling more soul on top of Mikati as well. So yeah, very straightforward list. If you don't really like the Dual Nation, definitely just cut it and play some other cards or max out on the other cards in this list instead. But for the most part, I think this is really great into the mirror just for the meta we have right now. And again, more anti-removal between Bracing Angel Ladder as well as the Vogelmort is just very, very nice. To wrap up the list, we have a pure Star-vader list here. Instead of Mikani, we put in 4 Krypton just for more soul charge. He's just something you also don't really mind slamming down and intercepting with because we have so many boosters here. We have Glory Maker at 3, Palladium at 4, and of course Lanthanum also at 4 as well. And we still have Twin Cast for that extra shield. I think Primordial Heartblaze is also something you can just put in here if you do want to try more of a really pure Star-vader list and have another Persona ride in the deck. But yeah, we have 3 Aluminium just because having more bodies in the front row is also nice. So I think this list is a little bit grade 2 heavy, but we're pretty much trying to fit every single Star-vader that I think is good besides like the other ones that exactly aren't Star-vader named or are kind of mid. But Krypton is really nice for that soul charge because you'll basically never run out of it, but you can't call it back from drop because it isn't a grade 1 off Colony Maker, but still a very strong card just to on-play soul charge 1. You don't really care if he dies, and if not, he's a really nice 10k magic booster for either Vanguard or for IZD. So yeah, that's pretty much the idea with this list. That's pretty much all we changed. We took it out Makani, just kind of maximized on Krypton, and then lowered some ratio, some other cards, and took it out the Fluctuate Barrage. All right, that pretty much covers it for Chaos Breaker Dragon. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what you think of the list, what else you'll be cooking for CBD. Next Tuesday, we have the reveal of presumably Danger World, because we have the related cards for Rouga, Aragami, and Armor Knight Cerberus. I'm so excited for this. I cannot wait. We're finally getting Danger World in the Future Card Buddy Fight X Vanguard collab, and I'm hoping we'll also see Legend World, hopefully Hero World, really hoping for those as well. But, you know, only time can tell. Really excited to get Danger World. I hope it's super aggressive. So hope the deck is very much gimme and gives you a lot to do, so you have a lot of abilities to your item or whatever you arm to your Vanguard, which is hopefully the case because you use a lot of items and weapons in that deck. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know if you're excited for the Buddy Fight reveals starting next week, because that will be, I think, pretty impactful for the meta. I'm hoping they give them a card for anti-deck out, or maybe something to like kind of stop sacrifice class, like losing abilities. But again, I think for the most part, if Buddy Fight just gets anything or some kind of generic that kind of slows down its deck out, it'll be like one of the probably, like, I wouldn't say the best decks, but definitely up there with the meta contenders. But yeah, that's pretty much it for me. Really excited for next week, and I'll see you again in another Vanguard video.